Let's talk about silence, not as absence, but as presence. The moment you go no contact, it's easy to think you're doing nothing. But you're not. You're making a statement, one that echoes louder than words. You're saying, I'm no longer participating in something that doesn't reflect my worth. And while on the surface it looks like distance, underneath it's a shift in power, in emotional energy, in psychology. You see, when we remove ourselves from someone's life, especially after conflict, confusion, or emotional intensity, we trigger something primal in the human brain, the need for closure. But more interestingly and more strategically, we also trigger curiosity. And curiosity is the most underestimated force in attraction. We live in a culture obsessed with doing, sending the next message, proving our worth, explaining our side. But in intimate dynamics, especially romantic ones, it's not always action that creates connection. Sometimes it's the pause, the lack, the unknown, because the mind hates a gap, it rushes to fill it. And in that space, she doesn't just think about what happened. She starts to wonder about you. She starts to remember, to re-evaluate, to re-feel. This is not a manipulative strategy. It's a psychological truth. When we pull away, we create space for the other person to re-engage with themselves, with their own feelings, with their own story of you. And that story often becomes idealized in absence. Why? Because memory isn't accurate, it's emotional. It's selective, it's biased. And when you're no longer there defending yourself or over-explaining, your silence allows her to create a version of you in her mind that feels compelling, mysterious, even powerful. Now let me be clear. This only works if your silence is rooted in self-respect, not punishment. You're not disappearing to hurt her. You're stepping back to return to yourself, to remember who you are without the chaos, to rebuild your center of gravity. And that centeredness, that internal shift is what changes the game. She doesn't feel chased anymore. She feels your absence. And she starts to question what that means. Silence in this context is not passive, it's active. It's charged. Think of it like music. The most powerful part of a song isn't always the sound, but the pause between notes. That's where the emotion rises. That's where the listener leans in. And in relationships, that leaning in is where the chase begins. The brain is wired for contrast. Familiarity dulls attraction, but contrast reignites it. When you were always available, always explaining, always reacting, there was no contrast. But when you suddenly shift into calm silence, when your energy changes, when your emotional availability becomes scarce, that contrast shocks the emotional system. It forces a new assessment. And here's something deeper: silence also reveals her. When you stop showing up, you stop feeding the dynamic, you stop filling the space. And now, she has to decide, does she care enough to step toward you? That decision tells you everything. Because the one who breaks the silence carries the emotional investment. And if it's her, you flip the script. You're no longer trying to be chosen. She is. This is not about control. It's about alignment. You're aligning with the version of yourself that doesn't beg, doesn't chase, and doesn't settle for breadcrumbs. You're embodying a truth that most people never realize. Real power in relationships comes not from how much you give, but from what you're willing to walk away from. And when that's authentic, not performative, it radiates, it changes the energy in the room. Or in this case, the energy across the silence. Now some will ask, but what if she forgets me, moves on, replaces me? That fear is understandable. But here's the thing. If your absence doesn't trigger her desire to reconnect, then your presence never truly held her attention. And that's information, not failure. Silence doesn't just awaken attraction. It reveals compatibility. It clarifies who was emotionally invested and who was just comfortable. There's a reason some of the most meaningful reunions in life happen after silence. It's because both people had time to see clearly. And clarity is the birthplace of intentional love, not impulsive emotion. So when you go no contact, don't treat it like a tactic. Embody it like a truth. Let it be a reflection of your self-worth, not a weapon to provoke a reaction. Your goal isn't to punish her or manipulate the dynamic. It's to shift the energy back to yourself. To say, through your actions, I know what I offer, and I'm not afraid to let it go if it's not respected. Because in the end, silence speaks. It says, I'm not available to be undervalued. And if she hears that message, if she feels that shift, and if she cares enough, she will come toward it. Not because you forced her to, but because your silence reminded her of your presence. And that, more than any words you could say, is what makes her chase you. Silence, when rooted in strength, doesn't push her away. It pulls her back, because what's truly valuable never goes unnoticed for long. There's a fundamental shift that happens when a man stops asking, how do I get her back? And starts asking, who am I becoming in her absence? That shift is where the chase begins, not hers but yours. A chase not for the woman, but for your own evolution. Because the truth is, she can't miss the man you were if he's still the same man. She has to feel that you're becoming someone she never quite finished discovering. Someone even she underestimated. This is where most men go wrong. They go into no contact waiting, stagnant, hoping she notices. They think silence alone will make her chase. But silence without transformation is just absence. It's the growth inside the silence that changes the dynamic. Here's the paradox of attraction. The more you try to prove your worth to someone, the more you subtly declare that you don't have it. And when you chase, you're not just pursuing someone, you're leaking your own value. You're saying, you're the prize, I'll adjust myself for you. But when you flip that, when you begin to live in a way that is deeply aligned with your purpose, your confidence, your masculine calm, you don't have to chase, you become the gravitational force. Now, let's be clear, this isn't about becoming some exaggerated alpha version of yourself. That's still performance. What I'm talking about is integration. Becoming a man who has emotionally digested the breakup or separation. Who has taken the lessons, the pain, the discomfort, and metabolized them into self-awareness, into action. Women don't just chase looks. They chase depth, integrity, ambition fused with humility, emotional presence without emotional chaos. When you become the man who doesn't need her to validate his worth, you give her something far more powerful to respond to, the unknown, the unfamiliar. And that is compelling. You're not trying to be who she once loved. You're becoming the man she didn't even know you could be. The man who walks into a room with presence, not because he demands attention, but because he's not looking for it. That stillness, that groundedness is magnetic. It's rare, and it speaks louder than words or empty apologies. So what does becoming that man actually look like? It means you stop living reactively, checking her stories, waiting for her messages, playing emotional chess, and you start living intentionally. You return to your body, to your breath, to your goals. You invest in your emotional intelligence, your physical health, your financial stability, and your spiritual center, not to get her back, but to get yourself back. You begin to take responsibility for your side of the dynamic without shame or blame. You clean your inner world so that your outer world starts to mirror it. When a woman senses this transformation, not through your words, but through the energy you now carry, something shifts. She starts to question. She starts to feel. And here's the catch, you're not the one giving her that feeling directly. She's giving it to herself through the contrast between who you were and who you are becoming. That contrast is the doorway to her chasing you. And maybe she doesn't come back. Maybe she watches from afar. That's not failure. That's filtration. Because the man you are becoming doesn't just attract her, he attracts everything that resonates with his new standard. Better women, better opportunities, better versions of love. You have to become more than a memory, more than the sum of what you once shared. You have to become a living reminder that growth is possible, and that distance didn't destroy you, it refined you. That's the real message you're sending in no contact. Not, I hope you come back, but I'll be here building, whether you do or not. The beautiful irony, that's what pulls her in. The second she feels that you no longer need her, but still respect what you had, she feels safe enough to re-engage. Not because you're waiting, but because you're walking forward. This path isn't about revenge or proving anything to her. It's about outgrowing the version of yourself that settled, that chased, that doubted. And as you do, you become the version of yourself she was always hoping would appear. but wasn't sure existed. So don't just disappear. Evolve. Let the silence between you be filled not with longing, but with growth. Because in that space, you're not losing her, you're discovering yourself. And when you do it right, you don't just make her wonder where you went, you make her wonder how she ever thought she could let you go. If you want to be chaste, don't become more visible, become more valuable. There's something deeply human about the desire for certainty. We crave it in love, in identity, in closure. We want to know where we stand, what we meant, if it's really over. But here's the irony in romance: certainty doesn't always attract. In fact, it often kills the very tension that desire needs in order to stay alive. What draws someone in is not always clarity, it's curiosity. And curiosity only exists in the presence of mystery. After no contact, the biggest mistake most men make is to immediately fill the silence with answers. They reach out with explanations, confessions, declarations of love. But what they don't realize is that every message, every overture removes a piece of the mystery. And mystery is magnetic. It's not about playing games, it's about allowing space for the unknown to do its work. Because it's in the unknown that desire has room to grow. We often believe that connection comes from closeness. But sometimes, it's the space between two people, the emotional distance, the uncertainty, that creates the pull. It's the unanswered question that lingers in the back of her mind. Why did he go silent? What's changed in him? Has he moved on? These questions don't arise when you're constantly available, explaining yourself, or trying to fix things. They only appear when you become quietly absent, when you let her feel your absence without offering her a story to attach to it. Mystery is not deception. It's depth. It's the part of you that she never fully understood, the part that now seems to have evolved while she wasn't watching. When you hold back just enough, when you stop revealing every thought and emotion, you allow her to project, imagine, and fill in the gaps. And human imagination, especially in matters of the heart, is a powerful force. Often, it creates a version of you that's more compelling than the one you tried so hard to prove. Think about it. Why do people become more attractive after they leave? It's not because they changed overnight. It's because the mind replays memories through a lens of longing, curiosity, and idealization. And when that person isn't giving you any more data to update your perception, your mind sticks with the best version it remembers. That's what mystery protects. It preserves the potential of you in her eyes. And potential, more than predictability, is what keeps her attention alive. But for mystery to work, it has to be backed by authentic change. You can't just go silent and expect her to chase. You have to become the kind of man who naturally creates curiosity through his energy, his presence, or rather, the new quality of his absence. If she senses that something is different, but she can't quite put her finger on it, she becomes emotionally engaged in trying to solve the puzzle. And that emotional engagement is the beginning of the chase. Most men try to get a woman to feel something through words. But emotions aren't created by what you say. They're created by what you withhold. When it's done with emotional intelligence, not spite, the challenge is to resist the urge to seek reassurance. To be okay with not knowing exactly what she's thinking. To trust that mystery, when held with calm confidence, will do more for you than persuasion ever could. And there's a deeper layer to this. Curiosity doesn't just work on her, it works on you. When you stop trying to resolve everything, when you allow mystery to exist between you, you're also allowing yourself to sit with uncertainty. And that's where real emotional maturity is developed. Because love, real, mature love, isn't about knowing everything. It's about being able to stay grounded even when you don't. So when she starts to feel that emotional itch, that quiet wondering, why haven't I heard from him? Did he really move on? You're no longer just a past relationship. You become an open loop in her mind. A story that didn't end cleanly. And humans are wired to seek resolution to open loops. But here's the key, don't be too quick to close it for her. Let her come to you, let her lean in. Let her want to understand who you are now. That's when the dynamic shifts. Not when you say, I've changed. But when she starts to feel it, and she has to reach out to find out why. If you want her to chase, don't give her all the answers. Become the question. There's a moment many men secretly long for after going no contact. The ping of a message, the unexpected call, the sudden reappearance after weeks or months of silence. It can feel like validation, like proof that the strategy worked. But what happens after that first reach out is where most men sabotage everything they've built. Because the truth is, the first message doesn't mean she's fully back. It doesn't mean she's chasing. It means you've stirred something in her. Curiosity, uncertainty, even nostalgia. It's an opening, not a destination. And how you respond in that moment determines whether the dynamic shifts in your favor or collapses right back into the old pattern. Most men, when she finally reaches out, fall into one of two extremes. Either they pounce, overrigor, emotionally flooding her with attention, or they freeze, playing cold and distant in a misguided attempt to stay high value. But both reactions come from the same root: insecurity. One tries to prove worth, the other tries to protect it. Neither comes from groundedness. If you've truly transformed during no contact, if you've re-centered, leveled up, and reconnected with your own self-worth, then her return doesn't shake you. It doesn't ignite a need for immediate validation. You don't panic. You don't rush. You stay in pace with yourself. Because real power is not in reaction, it's in response. You're not trying to win her back. You've already won yourself back. And from that place, you don't view her reappearance as a lifeline. You view it as information. A moment of reconnection, not a rescue. You're assessing her just as much as she's assessing you. Is she reaching out because she's truly curious about who you've become, or because she's lonely, uncertain, or bored? This is not judgment, it's clarity. And clarity keeps you from collapsing into old emotional habits. Reconnection should never be a return to what was. If you do that, the relationship resets to the same flawed dynamic that pushed you into no contact in the first place. The invitation now is to create something new, something built on mutual respect, emotional maturity, and inner alignment. That means you must meet her reach out not with neediness or aloofness, but with calm presence. A steady warmth that says, I'm open, but I'm no longer available for half love. This is where many men fail, not because they're not strong, but because they haven't yet internalized their transformation. They still perform high value rather than embody it. They try to be cool, detached, aloof. But true strength in this moment is not coldness, it's discernment. It's being able to engage without overinvesting, to express interest without chasing, to listen without bending yourself to be liked. You must learn to hold tension. Emotional tension is where desire grows. If you rush to soothe, to solve, to secure the connection, you collapse the space she needs to feel drawn in. That doesn't mean you play games. It means you let the dynamic unfold naturally. You allow the unknown to breathe. You let her feel the contrast between who you were and who you are now, without forcing it. And if the conversation continues, if the connection reopens, you lead with calm direction. You don't fall into endless texts, late-night emotional unpacking, or passive talking stages. You move with clarity. You know what you want, not necessarily from her, but from love, from life, from yourself. And that direction, that grounded clarity, is what makes her chase. Because she can feel that you are no longer orbiting around her emotional world. You are centered in your own. A man who cannot hold his frame after no contact becomes forgettable. A man who can hold it with integrity, without arrogance, without games, becomes unforgettable. Not because he made her feel wanted, but because he made her feel something deeper, safe. Safe to be drawn in, safe to trust his leadership. Safe to reconnect without drowning in the past. So if she comes back, don't collapse. Don't over-explain. Don't beg for her to see you differently. Let your energy speak. Let your calm, your pace, your boundaries, and your growth show her what words never could. Because if she reaches out, she's already wondering who you've become. Now show her. Don't be the man who celebrates the message. Be the man who makes her wonder why she ever stopped messaging.